How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Before I do anything else, I have a very important announcement to make. Is some of you have met my father at the various gatherings we have had, and today is his birthday, and I would like to wish my father, the 46th anniversary of his 40th birthday, or is it the 47th? I think it's the 46th. My calendar says 87, but I think it's 86. It's really like he's just reliving his 40th birthday over and over and over. I appreciate my father very much. I love him dearly. He's been unwell. I went over last week to see him and my mom, and it's old age sucks, but I love my parents, and I'm glad my dad is around to hear me wish him a happy birthday on the radio, unless he's run to the bathroom, which I assume not. He tries to get that out of the way. Now he's mortified and embarrassed by his son, so I better shut up and get to the news. Happy birthday, Dad. Okay. We've got to begin with the reduction in aviation. It's actually a very big story here that we are having to deal with, where the government of the United States is ordering a reduction in flights around the country. They will begin with a 4% cut in flights tomorrow, another 4% cut in flights on Saturday, and then 2% on cuts on Sunday. Yeah. So it'll be 4% on Friday, 4% on Saturday, 2% on Sunday. These are the 40 airports affected as of tomorrow, midnight tonight, tomorrow morning. Anchorage International, Hartsfield Jackson, Two Dead Mares International, Boston Logan, Baltimore Washington, Charlotte Douglas, Cincinnati Northern Kentucky, Dallas Love Field, Ronald Reagan Washington National, Denver International, Dallas Fort Worth International, Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County, Newark Liberty International, Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International, Honolulu International, Houston Hobby, Washington Dulles, George Bush Houston, Indianapolis International, JFK in New York, Las Vegas, McCarran Harry Reid International, Los Angeles International, Newark LaGuardia, Orlando, Chicago Midway, Memphis, Miami, Minneapolis St. Paul, Oakland, Ontario, Chicago O'Hare, Portland, Philadelphia, Phoenix Sky Harbor, San Diego, Louisville, Seattle, Tacoma, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Teterboro, and Tampa. All of the New York area. You got Teterboro, you got, except Westchester, you got Teterboro, you got LaGuardia, you got JFK, you've got Newark. Their reason is legit. Now, they may be targeted at, you might say, because those are Democratic areas, although not all of them are. A number of them in Houston or in Texas are going to be affected. A number in Tennessee are going to be affected. The reason is because these areas of the country are already seeing air traffic control shortages. So they're seeing air traffic control shortages, and they're also seeing a major uptick in use, and they're seeing more delays, and they're worried because as there are fewer air traffic controllers showing up for work, that's more planes in the sky each person has to manage. They're cutting back and delaying flights. So they're going to reduce these. Now, there is a political reason. If we're honest, the reason it's coming now is between Donald Trump's statements and the election, the Democrats have less incentive to shut down now or to reopen now. You got to understand to a degree that Donald Trump has some culpability here, because instead of going after the Democrats, he's now targeting the Republicans to end the filibuster. And when Donald Trump is attacking his own party in the Senate instead of attacking Democrats, why would Democrats want to reopen the government? Also, they had a good election night on Tuesday. They think the voter backlash is against the Republicans, and so they've convinced themselves that they prolong the shutdown, the Republicans will have to cave, not the Democrats. Now, that's not actually going to happen. Not actually going to happen. The Republicans have no real need to cave. And I actually think the Democrats are probably sometime at the beginning of next week going to finally decide to reopen the government. It wasn't helpful for Donald Trump to start attacking the Republicans in the Senate over the filibuster. Now, what is the filibuster? We actually got a couple of emails yesterday. Can I explain the filibuster? Yes. In 1806, so let me back up to 1789 to 1806 in the United States Senate. To end debate, you only needed a majority. It was like the House of Representatives. In 1806, I actually think it was Aaron Burr was the vice president, and the Senate decided to update the rules, and they got rid of the motion to call the question with a majority, quorum call of a majority. And you had to have an agreement of 2/3 of the Senate to shut off debate. For a very long time in American history after that, in the Senate, the rule is this, and this is where the filibuster comes in. So let me explain the House of Representatives first. In the House of Representatives, it's majority rules. So when a majority say it's time to cut off debate, it's time to vote, that's what happens. In the Senate, since 1806, you've got to have that. First, it was 2/3, then it was 60 votes. It's now 60 votes. In order to stop talking about something, to stop debating something, you have to have 60 votes. In normal parliamentary procedure, it's a 2/3 vote. Under Robert's Rules of Order, a call of the question takes 2/3. Anyone can say, if you're in a parliamentary setting, say, I call the question. And the question's been called. Is there a second? There's a second. We vote. If you don't get 2/3, they shut off debate. The rule is, though, once everybody's had a chance to speak, you can call the question with a majority vote. In the Senate, it's 60 votes. In the Senate, it's not the House. It's not majority rules. The senators have a lot of say in things. The whole purpose of the Senate is to slow down the passage of legislation. And so in the rules of the Senate, a senator can stand up and talk for as long as he wants. And as long as that senator is talking, no senator can bring other business to the floor of the Senate. And that senator can yield to questions, and he can answer their questions. And the rule is he's got to stand up. He can't lean on the table. And the moment he sits down, his time is done. And for, I think, the first 6 hours or so, if he's talking, he's got to talk about the actual legislation. After that, he can talk about whatever he wants to talk about. That's the actual filibuster. And when each member of the Senate has had their say, and again, each senator can speak as long as they want, and when every senator's had their say, a majority can cut off debate. But until that moment, until every senator has had the opportunity to speak once on the matter, it takes 60 votes in the Senate to cut off debate. That's the filibuster in practice. It's actually a very good rule. It slows down the work of the Senate. It makes it possible to pass things. But here's the thing. If you do a real filibuster where people stand up and talk, you can't do anything else. You can't do anything else. So that's the filibuster as it's supposed to be done. This is how it's done in practice, though. What they do is they're not actually there speaking about it. They bring it up. They make a call to call the question. They don't have 60 votes. So they set it aside and they go on to other business. See, what the Senate does, you got to follow along with me here. What the Senate does is they bring up the legislation. They don't have 60 votes to get it passed, so they set it aside and they go do a bunch of other business. So they're still passing legislation. They're doing executive nominations. They're confirming judges. Almost all of it is on the executive calendar, that is appointments and confirmations. They're not passing other legislation. And then they bring it up again. Don't get 60 votes. They set it aside. They go back and they confirm more judges, confirm more appointees. They hold hearings, all these sorts of things. So what they're doing is they're using the 60 vote threshold to cut off debate, but they're not forcing the senators to actually stand up and talk. They should force the senators to stand up and talk. The trade-off is this. There's a backlog of appointments for the Trump administration. There are a lot of people, we're 10 months into the Trump administration, there are a lot of people the president nominated who haven't been confirmed yet by the Senate. Not just cabinet appointees, well, not the sub-cabinet, other executive branch appointees, but also judges. So the Senate is not forcing the Democrats to have a talking filibuster because they want to do all these confirmations, and the Democrats can't stop those confirmations. So we're waiting for the Democrats to give them 60 votes. And there are, it appears, 5 Democrats who have been willing to break through, but they were pressured by Chuck Schumer to do nothing. They were pressured by Chuck Schumer to hold the line until after the election on Tuesday night. And now that the election is over, there was a lot of expectation that today the Senate Democrats would vote to reopen the government and give the Republicans 60 votes to cut off debate in the Senate. But then yesterday, the president went on his tirade about the filibuster. And when the president went on his tirade about the filibuster, he didn't attack the Democrats, although he did. He spent most of his time attacking the Republicans for refusing to get rid of the filibuster. And that, well, gave the Democrats license to say, you know what, I actually think that there's no reason for me to do anything.
The biggest thing is the filibuster. We have to get the country going. We will pass legislation at levels you've never seen before, and it'll be impossible to beat us. By the way, if they do, they're going to do it anyway, and they are going to immediately do the filibuster. And when they do the filibuster, they're going to pack the court. They want at least five justices. Now I hear it's up to 5. I actually heard up to 7 and up to 9, okay? They want new judges. They want to pack the court, and they will do it in the first day, maybe the week. Maybe they'll slow it down because there's no reason to rush. But they'll do it first week. They'll vote on this. And I have friends over there that are Democrats, I'm close to a lot of people. And I asked them about that because some people say, well, maybe they won't do that. I mean, they destroyed the career of Manchin and Sinema, and they got them out. They were the only objectors. Nobody else is going to object. They're going to do it the first day.
And he goes on to tell the Republicans, you got to do this. They're not going to. They don't have the votes to do it. And by the president antagonizing the Republicans in the Senate, well, the Democrats have no incentive. They've got no incentive to end the shutdown because the president is targeting the Republicans. And if the president is fighting the Republicans, he's not fighting the Democrats, and that's causing angst in the Republican base. You've now got a lot of young Republicans who are yelling at the Republican senators to get rid of the filibuster, get rid of the filibuster, get rid of the filibuster. They're going to do it anyway. They're going to do it. They didn't the last time. Then you heard the president say, well, because of Manchin and Sinema. Yeah, but even Manchin and Sinema went on the record and said there were other Democrats who didn't want to get rid of the filibuster, but they didn't have to vote because Manchin and Sinema were. So why make the progressives mad? The Democrats want the Republicans to get rid of the filibuster because the Democrats know they don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. They want the GOP to do it now. That's what the Democrats have been saying. And now the president comes along and echoes them, get rid of the filibuster. They're not going to get rid of the filibuster. We don't want them to get rid of the filibuster. But the Democrats today probably won't vote to reopen the government. And so those of you with flights, I'm one of them. I got to fly out tomorrow. I'm headed to Las Vegas, one of the affected airports. To be clear here, note to Delta, I don't mind if on Sunday you have to cancel my flight and I got to come back on Monday. I'm totally fine staying one extra day in Las Vegas. If you got to cancel. Now, the guy I'm going with, he's got to be at work on Monday. That'll be problematic, but But I'm okay. If I need to take one for the team once I get there, I'm okay staying an extra day. I'm sure Charlie can find somebody to deal with the show on Monday. I'm totally fine, Delta, if you just get me there, please, tomorrow. Just get me there safely tomorrow, and then I will be fine. And I'm happy to take one for the team. I know we got to give these air traffic controllers a rest because the Democrats are just flat out refusing to reopen the government, and they don't think they have an incentive to after Tuesday night's elections and Donald Trump's attacks on the Republicans. Have you heard about Cove Pure? You may have one of those water pitchers you put in your refrigerator. Well, you can get the Cove Pure, put it on your countertop, and you get hot water, cold water. It's all really good filtered water. You can pull the pitcher out of it and pour, or you can put a cup under it, and it's got the buttons for like a 6-ounce, an 8-ounce, or a 16-ounce glass. You push it, you say, I want it hot, I want it cold. It fills up the glass exactly the way you want it. Even a custom option if you've got a 20-ounce glass or big Yeti tumbler, whatever you need. It just works, and the water is great. Uses reverse osmosis, among other things. I've been drinking way more water since I got one of these on my countertop in the office. If you're looking for a gift that's good for a loved one they'll actually use, get them the Cove Pure. I partnered with them. They'll give you a special $250 holiday discount. Go to covepure.com/Eric. That's COVE, Cove, Pure, PURE.com/Eric, ERICK. $250 off, covepure.com/Eric. The sale's going to end, so you better hurry up. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number 877-973-7425. Over at the White House, the President of the United States announcing cuts to the weight loss drugs. Your GLP-1 drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, and the like, they're going to be reducing some prices and making more accessible the weight loss drugs, which there's a growing argument that if they were more readily available, a lot of health conditions due to obesity would go down in the country. We will see if that actually happens. Also, there is some breaking news that actually just hit the wire as I was talking. Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the president, says a new country will be joining the Abraham Accords. That is the peace deal in the Middle East that recognizes Israel and gives trade benefits between Middle Eastern countries and the United States. That's a very, very big deal. The White House also saying we've dropped infertility drug prices. And so you got infertility drug prices coming down, a weight loss medication drug prices coming down, and a new addition to the Abraham Accords coming up. We'll find out who that is probably before the end of the show. Folks, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them and save $200. Get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. Eden, like the Garden of Eden, pure as the driven snow. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. So they're an air purifier, and they get rid of dust and pollen very effectively. They also kill 99.9% of bacteria and viruses that flow through the machine. But where they really shine, the way I use them, is an air purifier that eliminates odors. It generates ozone. And ozone eliminates odors. And ozone, because it's a gas, it's O3 instead of O2. It goes where the odors originate and wipes them out at the source, so it's very effective at it. I keep one in my travel bag. In fact, I'm headed to Vegas tomorrow, and I have one with me just in case someone has smoked in the hotel room, or has happened before, smoked in the room next door. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm wipes out the odors. You can get 3 of them and save $200. Get them for less than $200. You go to EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. at EdenPureDeals.com. You can thank me later. When we come back, I want to talk about OpenAI. They're now asking the government to subsidize their chip purchasing. I'm thinking OpenAI sounds more and more like Enron, and I'm afraid they're going to dive us into a major financial crisis as a country if we're not careful with it. AI, I'm not scared of it, but I think it's about to wreck the economy. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick 2. What if you could have all 3 at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I want to move on from electoral politics and the politics of D.C. because I'm reading more and more stories about OpenAI, and if you go back to the early 2000s, you had the Enron scandal and the WorldCom scandal. You had the collapse of Global Crossing, and it looks like we've got all of these things, Enron, WorldCom, and Global Crossing, all compiled into a single company that is OpenAI. Let me just read you part of this from Berbergen at the Wall Street Journal. If you don't know OpenAI, I bet you've heard of ChatGPT. That's their star product. OpenAI Chief Financial Officer Sarah Frier said that an IPO is not in the cards in the near term and said the company hopes the federal government might backstop the financing of future data center deals. As OpenAI ramps up its spending on data center capacity to unheard of levels, the company is hoping the federal government will support its efforts by helping to guarantee the financing for chips behind its deals. The depreciation rates of AI chips remain uncertain, making it more expensive for companies to raise the debt needed to buy them. Isn't that a curious phrase, to raise the debt needed to buy them? What has OpenAI done? See if this sounds normal to you. OpenAI got NVIDIA, the big AI chip manufacturer. They make graphic processing units, GPUs. NVIDIA invested $100 million into OpenAI, and then OpenAI bought $100 million worth of NVIDIA chips. Where was the money? The chips went to OpenAI. So NVIDIA sent money to OpenAI, which sent the money back to NVIDIA, which sent chips to OpenAI. Where's the actual exchange? It's like an NVIDIA exchange. NVIDIA sent them $100 million worth of chips for nothing. And then there's AMD. OpenAI then, after going with NVIDIA, announced that it was going to take a stake in AMD, the Intel competitor. And AMD stock soared, and then OpenAI sold the stock that it had bought after having announced it was going to invest in AMD, and then used the money from the sale of the stock, the profit, to buy AMD chips. Does any of that sound, for lack of a better word, kosher? Does any of that sound legitimate? And now along comes OpenAI saying, hey, we really want the federal government to backstop the financing of future data center deals. Let's talk about the data center deals. In small towns across America now, and in rural parts of the country, there are massive data centers being built. The land is cheaper than in urban areas. So they can build these massive data centers. Those data centers then use a tremendous amount of energy. Natural gas usually, but sometimes coal. Occasionally wind and solar, but because they're running 24/7, it's typically nuclear power, although that's mostly down in Georgia now. Typically natural gas or coal, using a tremendous amount of energy. Some data centers in North Dakota are using as much energy as cities in the South. So let's talk about the cascading effects. OpenAI is funding itself through these weird deals. It wants a federal backstop on its data center deals. It and these other companies are building these massive data centers that consume massive amounts of energy. Power companies are having to expand the power grid and upgrade the lines. What happens when they collapse? What happens if they collapse? It's not just going to be OpenAI that goes under. They're going to be real estate companies holding massive, unusable data centers that are going to be empty because the parts are going to be sold at cost at auction to try to recoup losses. The power companies will have all sorts of excess power now that they're not going to be able to sell, which will financially hurt the power companies. The small towns that are getting big property tax increases, that are building out small towns, are suddenly going to no longer have the revenue stream they had because the data centers are going to be gone. You're going to have a cascading effect on society. It's not just going to be OpenAI. And in the meantime, they're costing jobs. Now, they're not costing all the jobs. They're costing some jobs. I actually am in the camp that believes that the loss of jobs from AI is going to be smaller than some expect. And by the way, there's an overarching layer here about those job losses. Let's review here to get to this point. OpenAI is getting NVIDIA to give them $100 million. They're sending that money back to NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is sending them $100 million worth of chips. OpenAI is announcing that it's going to invest in AMD, and then when the stock goes up, they sell it and they buy chips from AMD. They want the government to backstop them. They're building these massive data centers requiring massive buildup in the power grid. They're doing it in rural parts of America. They're generating money from those parts of America, all to produce an AI product called ChatGPT that a lot of people have started using and hardly any companies have seen a return on investment in. Most of the companies that are using the products from OpenAI, from Google, from Perplexity, all of these OpenAI's like chat AI products, businesses aren't seeing a return on investment from them. Which tells me another thing, that they're not profitable. The people using them aren't seeing a return on investment. They are costing some jobs, but here's how they're costing jobs. OpenAI is taking white-collar starter positions. Where you might have had a kid fresh out of college building spreadsheets for you, OpenAI is now building the spreadsheets. Where you might have had a kid out of college running an Excel spreadsheet and running numbers for you, now AI can do that. So now what's going to happen is the kids are going to get the jobs. They're not going to get the starter positions. It means they got to go get their grad degree, and they got to jump into a company a couple levels above the jobs AI has taken. So kids are going to have to go into more debt when they get out of college by going on to get their graduate degree before they start working at a company to jump ahead of where AI is, which is going to profoundly disrupt education and the debt related to education. And companies are still not yet seeing a return on investment. We are in a bubble. It's obvious we're in a bubble. The sorts of business deals that OpenAI is doing by itself, and this doesn't include all the other chat-like AI companies, the ones that OpenAI alone are doing are deeply destabilizing to the economy. People talk about black swan events. Black swan events are those economically destructive events that come along that people don't necessarily see. It's an unpredictable occurrence that has an extreme impact. You oftentimes don't see it until after it's come, and then you say, oh, that was entirely predictable. This is entirely predictable. It's an entirely predictable event that something economically disruptive is coming, and it's going to be because of AI, and it's going to be because, like the internet darlings of the 1990s, they're not actually producing a profitable, reliable product that people get benefit from. That's not saying AI is going to collapse and go away. The internet's still here, but all the internet companies went out of business. WorldCom and Global Crossing, they built up massive supply of cable communications and the pipeline for data, and they were just years ahead of it. And they built so much capacity, and then they had accounting scandals to try to cover it, at least WorldCom did, and they went bankrupt. Enron went bankrupt. It cooked the books. It engaged in shady financing of products. We're back to Enron, Global Crossing, and WorldCom, but it's just one company now, OpenAI, with all the shady deals. And I'm sorry, they're shady deals. When you got NVIDIA giving them money and they're giving the money back, and then NVIDIA's giving them chips, that's not a sound business transaction. And they're costing people jobs for a product that isn't generating a return on investment. They're generating tax revenue for small towns that are becoming dependent on a tax revenue that could be ephemeral and go away. This is very much like the 1990s dot-com bubble. Pets.com made a big splash, got a lot of attention with its ads at the Super Bowl, and it collapsed. The number of major tech companies in the internet bubble that got everybody's attention, provided some sort of good at the time, got massive capitalization, and then collapsed. And now think about this. This goes to something I said yesterday. A lot of these companies are capitalizing themselves off the public markets where there's less scrutiny, where the SEC isn't digging in every day, where the public can investigate the books and the public filings. There are no public filings because they're not in public, they're in private, and they're getting private capitalization. And they're getting that private capitalization from banks, from venture capitalists, from private equity funds. They're spreading their risk among a heavily leveraged already financial industry. Without a lot of public oversight or public disclosures, y'all, we're headed towards not good economic times again. And here's my fear. Because of the arrogance of these companies, because of the wealth of the people backing them, because of the catastrophic economic consequences that are going to come from their collapse, don't expect the next populist shift in this country to be on the right. This isn't free markets at work. But people will say it's free markets at work. And in the process of blaming the free market, the AOCs and the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanderses of the world are going to capitalize on the chaos of the financial collapse that comes and try to push this country further to the left with more socialist policy where the technocrats in Washington spend more time picking the winners and losers. We're not in a free market situation here. There aren't arm's length transactions happening. We've got corporate greed. We've got cronyism. We don't have capitalism. We've got corporatism. We've got cronyism. And we've got Washington in the bed also trying to do backstops financing for these events using the taxpayers' dime at a time that we're at $39 trillion in national debt. We have designed a system now where the technocrats are involved and the big businesses are shielded from scrutiny. The government gets to pick winners and losers, and you are always the loser. You're always the one who has to back the bailout. We have denied the ability of the creative destruction of the marketplace to take effect because the government picks the winners and losers and protects the winners. And they're doing that with OpenAI right now and these other companies. This is WorldCom, Global Crossing, Enron combined, and it's going to have a devastating effect on the economy when it blows up. And I hate to be the one, the Cassandra in the moment that nobody listens to, but you can see it coming with the way they're structuring these deals. And they're going to drive up costs for college grads to try to get jobs in the process, and they're going to fester and foster resentment together. And when the whole thing comes apart, you're going to have AOC and Bernie Sanders there claiming that they're here to help and what we need is more government. And that's exactly the wrong lesson to learn, but it's the one a lot of people are going to believe because they don't see the nefarious hand of the government behind helping OpenAI deal with these sorts of issues now. They don't see anything other than the greedy Silicon Valley guys structuring an economy that's going to go belly up pretty soon. And it'll be the private sector that becomes the fall guy when this isn't really the free market working. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, if you text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, the 4 things to know this afternoon, and all the social media links. And you should be following me on Instagram because I'm going to be ruining an impressive golf course on Saturday. And I'm sure there will be pictures. I'm sure there will. Let me jump to the phones here. Chad in Montgomery, Alabama. Welcome, sir. How are you, man?
Oh, man, it's great to talk to you. I'm so glad you're talking about this AI disaster that's coming our way. My son and I have been kind of talking about it the last couple of weeks. I want to give you 2 canaries in the coal mine on this, all right? Mm-hmm. The first, of course, is Michael Burry, who that Big Short Michael Burry, remember him?
Right.
All right.
Yep.
So he just shorted Palantir and NVIDIA $1 billion on all this AI stuff. And what he is looking at is the fact that all these CapEx loans that are involved, he thinks they're going to fail. And like you were just talking about a minute ago, that's the money they are using to build these enormous data centers. And we have some in Montgomery. We got some up in Leesburg, Virginia. They're all over the place. The second canary in the coal mine is Deutsche Bank itself. A couple of weeks ago, Deutsche Bank started trying to protect its position. It has loaned billions of dollars to various AI companies to build these data centers. And so they are now creating default protection. Sound familiar? CDOs. They are using these things called SRT, synthetic risk transfers. Sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what they are doing is they are shorting their own AI stocks that they've bought to cover the potential loss from the collapse of these loans that they've made to build these data centers. All right? Those 2 things alone, and you can say, Burry's wrong sometimes, he's right sometimes. That may be true. But Deutsche Bank knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They have billions of dollars out there in these data centers, and they are looking at it, and they're saying, I think we're overextended. We better short some of these AI stocks so that we can offset the losses with those profits that when we have the losses from these data centers. That's what's going on here. And if you don't believe me, remember Greg Lippman? That's the guy who Ryan Gosling played in The Big Short.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, he was the Deutsche Bank guy, right?
Right.
So these CapEx loans, the only difference that we have with those 2 scenarios is that in The Big Short, it was about the failure of mortgage loans. Here, it's going to be the failure of these capital expenditure loans that all these businesses have lent and borrowed in order to create these data centers. So there is, I'm telling you, there's a lot of smoke here.
It is. Thanks for that. That's helpful. I got to let you go there. But yes, thank you. Listen to Chad here. He's right. And Deutsche Bank knows their stuff. Americans for Prosperity is actually one of the issues they're raising is how the government is involving itself in this stuff. It's providing incentives that actually destabilize the markets, and that's why they favor common sense conservative reforms, including on these issues. You can join them at afpvolunteer.com. But it's not just those issues that many of you find esoteric. It's school choice. It's tax breaks for moms and dads and small businesses. They advocate these things around the country. They advocate something called the REINS Act, which would require that state legislatures approve major bureaucratic regulations that add major costs to businesses. And around the country, they get volunteers involved at afpvolunteer.com, afpvolunteer.com. You can sign up with Americans for Prosperity today, get involved with AFP, become an activist, or just become really informed about what's going on in your neck of the woods around the country. They've got chapters in every state. afpvolunteer.com. And one of their board of advisors, a great group, afpvolunteer.com.